Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is time for another true crime video yet again, and today we will be talking about the very disturbing and still unsolved disappearance of Charlene Downs. Charlene Downs was born on March 25th, 1989 in West Midlands, England to her parents Robert and Karen. Charlene had three siblings, two sisters and one brother, and when she was 10 years old, they all moved to Blackpool. Growing up, Charlene was described to be a happy, outgoing, and down-to-earth girl. She was said to be full of mischief and was quite rebellious. When this incident happened, Charlene was actually about to start at a new school after she had been expelled from her previous one due to bad behavior. On November 1st, 2003, it was a very normal day. Charlene had her entire day planned since this was a Saturday. At around noon, she went to a friend's house and hung out for a few hours before coming home midday. Now, she then told her mother, Karen, that she was going out with her sister, Becky, at 5:30 p.m. after her mother leaves for work. At around 6:45 p.m., Charlene and Becky were walking around town when they spotted their mother giving out flyers. They then approached her, and this is when Becky said that she just wanted to go home early, leaving Charlene with their mom as she waited for her friends, Natalie and Natasha. The group planned on hanging around town for a few hours, and Karen was aware of this, reminding Charlene to come home before her curfew of 10 p.m. A few hours later, Karen got home a few minutes after 10 p.m., only to be greeted by her husband Robert, who quickly informed her that Charlene wasn't back yet. And due to her rebellious nature, her parents did not worry too much at first. However, a few hours later, Charlene wasn't home yet. And they tried reaching her, however, she never answered her phone, so Robert got on his bike and tried to look for her, but to no avail. The next morning, still nothing, no news at all. Karen and Robert then decided to drive to Charlene's friends' houses in hopes of finding her there, thinking that she might have slept over at one of her friends' house and just failed to ask for permission or let them know. However, no one had seen her, not even Natasha nor Natalie, who were with her the night prior. But they did inform Charlene's parents that they left Charlene along the pier at around 9:30 p.m. the night before because they had to babysit. And this is when Karen and Robert started to panic. They quickly contacted the police but were told to wait another 24 hours before filing a missing persons report. So that's what they did. They waited for another 24 hours. After this, the search for Charlene began. The investigators received a number of leads, but these ultimately led to nowhere. A few weeks after Charlene's disappearance, Karen was starting to get frustrated as to why any of the local newspapers hadn't covered Charlene's story yet. And this is when she discovered that the police told the media not to cover Charlene's story because it was nothing but a runaway case. And of course, due to the lack of police cooperation and media coverage, and because there were no witnesses, this case soon turned cold. 3 years later, in 2006, the Downs family suddenly receives a call from the same group of investigators. They were asked to come into the police station, and upon being asked why they were brought in there for a meeting, the police officers told them some shocking news. The family was then informed that they had received a tip suggesting that Charlene was murdered and that 2 arrests were going to be made that same day. And this completely broke Karen and Robert's hearts. Deep inside, they had hoped that Charlene had just ran away to her own accord. But learning 3 years later that their daughter was actually killed was just unbelievable for them. That same morning, 29-year-old Ayad Al-Batiki, a man from Jordan, was arrested under the suspicion of murdering 14-year-old Charlene Downs. Ayad owned a local food joint called the Funny Boys, and along with him, his business partner Mohammed Raveshi, was also apprehended under the accusation of disposing of Charlene's body. Now, these two men were arrested because their brothers, one of their brothers, I'm not sure if it was Ayad or Mohammed's brother, but one of their brothers tipped off the police saying that the two had been bragging about killing a teenage girl. But at first, the authorities never told anyone, not even the Downs family, why these two were arrested. So they had no idea why Ayad and Mohammed even became suspects in the first place. Then a few days later, Robert's sister called. She was frantic, asking Karen if they had already read Charlene's story on the newspaper. This article contained the police's theory as to what might have happened to Charlene, and it wasn't pretty. They theorized that Charlene was sexually assaulted, killed, and then was cooked as kebab meat before being sold to consumers, and that is why there was no body to be found. And this was, of course, even more heartbreaking for the Downs family. They found out about this through the newspaper because the authorities somehow thought that it was a good idea to release this information to the media before telling the victim's family. On May 2007, the trials began. An audio recording of Ayad al-Batiki and Mohammed Reveshi was played in court. Because of the tip the police got from one of these men's brothers, they bugged their cars, homes, and Funny Boys, their place of business. In these recordings, Ayad admitted to having sex with a teenage girl, killing her out of anger and then feeding her body through the meat grinder before selling her remains as kebab meat. Mohammed also proudly chimed in, commenting how there's literally nothing left of this young girl to be found as evidence. However, despite all this incriminating audio recordings, there was no mention of Charlene at all. They never mentioned a name. They just said that it was a teenage or underage girl. This could have been any other teenager, so the police decided to interview people in the community. The authorities interviewed 3,000 people in the area, which eventually led them to the discovery of an illegal grooming ring run by local food joints. Which is insane. So basically, the owners of these local restaurants were grooming and sexually exploiting at least 60 girls from the age of 11 to 15, and this included Funny Boys, the takeout place owned by Ayad and Mohammed. 14-year-old Charlene Downs was one of these 60 girls, and it was discovered that she had been a part of this ring for at least 1 year before her disappearance. And her parents, her friends had no idea. Well, I don't know about the friends, but her parents had no idea. These food joint owners would offer these underage girls free food, free booze, free cigarettes, and as well as some narcotics in return for sexual favors. This was all presented in court as evidence, but this resulted to a hung jury and a verdict was not reached, resulting to these two men being released as there was simply not enough evidence to tie them up with Charlene's disappearance specifically. Now, a retrial for the following year was scheduled. However, this too fell through as flaws were found in the audio tape and it could no longer be used as evidence. Ayad al-Batiki and Mohammed Reveshi were also given a compensation of $250,000 each for false arrest. A few weeks after this, Karen Downs was actually arrested because she stabbed her husband Robert after an argument. So Charlene's mom, Karen, stabbed her husband after they got into a fight. Now, he did not press any charges, saying that he understood where she was coming from and he knew why his wife was so tense and so angry, and Karen was therefore released. In March 2009, one of Charlene's sisters, Emma, was charged with racially aggravated assault against one of the suspect's brothers. And 3 years later, in 2012, Charlene's brother was also charged for assaulting Mohammed Reveshi after bumping into him somewhere. This case really pisses me off because yes, Charlene's name was never mentioned in the audio recording. However, these local food joint owners, and especially Mohammed and Ayad, they were proven to be involved, or they were proven to be running an illegal grooming ring. They were grooming 60 girls in the area. And no one was held accountable for it. No one was charged with it. Ayad and Mohammed were not only released, they were also compensated $250,000 each. What the fuck? Up until now, Charlene's remains have never been found, but she is most probably no longer alive because this did happen in 2003, 20 years ago. She would have been 34 years old by now, and I just hope that this case somehow gets solved someday, and I wish that Charlene Downs and her family get the justice that they truly deserve. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much all the information that I have for today's case. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys on my next video.